I want to talk about how your early emotional experience shape your behavior and how your early emotional experiences can impact the way you communicate. It can impact the way you teach. It can even impact the way you lead other people. And the reason I want to talk to you about this is because sometimes when you're giving a presentation, you can be triggered and you can start harming the people you're facilitating to, and you may not even realize it. If you don't take care of yourself, not only could you harm other folks, but you could also self sabotage. You could also find yourself feeling like you're not worthy, all because you haven't really dealt with some of those earlier emotional traumas or experiences that are really guiding and or interrupting your ability to present really good, solid, and impactful content. And so we're going to take a step back from all the tools and tricks and all that kind of stuff in facilitating and talk more about, our emotional stability, our ability, our capacity to manage self-awareness and how we show up in learning spaces. So I want you to imagine that you're giving a presentation and someone in the audience starts fidgeting or they start checking their phone. Just imagine how you start feeling. A lot of us pinpoint those types of folks, and our brains start telling us a story. They hate this presentation. They must be bored. I must not be doing it right. This is an alarm in your brain that's telling you to interpret what they're doing as something negative or to take it personal. And I want you to learn how to shut that down. I want you to reframe it. Okay. So instead of going, they hate it, maybe they're just taking notes on their phone. Maybe they are multitasking because of the type of work that they do. I want you to stay calm and focus instead on the people who are engaged. So let's talk about how these stress responses inside of you, whether you're fighting, or freezing, or fawning, can show up even when you're presenting. Have you ever had one person in your audience who keeps challenging you? Yeah, your fight mode may start to show up. It's going to tell you to argue. If you're in flight mode, it's just going to tell you to avoid that person, eye contact and all. If you're freezing, it's going to make you blank out. And if you're fawning, it's when you start to over explain to please that person. What I want you to do instead is take a deep breath and be curious. I always say, wow, I appreciate you for sharing that point. Can you tell me more about your perspective? Okay. You're not fighting, you're not running, you're facilitating. And then, even after you ask them to explain what their challenge is, or their rejection is, or their disagreement is, invite other folks into the room to do the same and say, hey, we hear what you're saying. Before I respond to that, is there anybody else who'd like to respond, add to it, or offer a different perspective? Now you're taking the heat off of you and you're allowing the room to explore someone else's perspective in a way that is equitable and an exchange of ideas. That's going to help you to stop doing all the talking, let them give a chance to talk. You can regulate your emotions and get back into it once you found your into the conversation. Don't let the conversation go too long. Don't let the dialogue go off rails. Contain it. All you're doing is allowing that one person to say what they feel. And instead of you feeling the pressure to respond and be right or whatever, open it up a little bit so other folks can weigh in. I found that other audience members may have my perspective and they may say it. Other folks may want to challenge that person directly in a way that is still equitable and safe. And you can guide them back toward the content by saying, you know what, your perspective can be valid in certain contexts and situations. And the content that I'm teaching is also valid as well. Let's hold both of them as potential truths as we move forward in this conversation. Here's another example. You just nailed your presentation. You did good, but now it's time for question and answering. Someone asks you a question that feels a little bit like criticism. Okay. And in your mind, let's say, for example, you're spiraling, right? In your mind, you're saying, I'm not good enough. Dang, did I just mess up? What I want you to do is pause and say, thank you for your question. Let me clarify. So, the first half of this, we talked about us as facilitators and how it's important for us to manage our emotions. And it's important for us to understand how we're showing up in spaces and potentially why. But now, I want to talk about how your audience may show up in your training. If you sense that there is tension, try saying this. How's everybody feeling so far? I want to check in with you a little bit here. For you to just acknowledge emotion, that creates a safe space for folks to speak. And it also creates an opportunity for you to show up as emotionally intelligent and on a deeper level, right? Either way, take a break for them to do some introspection, for them to do some reflection, and then come back to the room. Sometimes it's a matter of playing a little bit of jazz music and do some breathing where folks close their eyes if they're comfortable. Sometimes it's doing those small things that get people to regulate their own emotions and get back engaged in the learning. What I'm trying to tell you is people's behavior in your session oftentimes is a reflection of the experiences they've had, both negative and or positive. And instead of looking at people going, oh, I can't stand them, or yuck, I don't like them, I want you to reframe their behavior in your own mind first. I want you to think about possible reasons why they may be showing up that way. And then I want you to learn how to facilitate in a way that accommodates their strengths and holds them accountable to making room for other folks to show up in a comfortable way as well.